Joining me live is the Executive Director at Anglicare Australia Kasy Chambers. Kasy, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. Look, not all these aged care centres are, charity or not-for-profit. Some of these do run for profit, like Hammond Care. Why does this wage signal matter right across the board?
Look, I think there's a couple of things. This is a very valuable piece of work that people do. Older Australians deserve every bit of care that with dignity that we can provide. And at the moment, it's one of the lowest paid jobs in Australia. And that sends the wrong signal. So that there's that to begin with, the value of the work. There's also the issue, of course, that we are competing when we're running aged care, not just with services like disability services, where nurses and people who are doing the same work are paid more, but actually with all the other sectors as well, with the mining sector, with hospitality, all those kind of areas. So we do need to make sure that we can attract workers, we can keep workers, and we need to make sure that there's a career path. That this is a really incredibly, rewarding place to work, but it's not very rewarding financially. And that's what we need to make sure that we address. At the moment, we've got lots and lots of aged care workers who are leaving the industry because they can't afford the rent or the housing, close enough to their work. So we've got big issues happening in this industry. And one of the things that I'm really thankful for in this budget and in the budget reply speech is that at long last we've got aged care in the public eye, in the public debate. It started with the Royal Commission, and now we're keeping it there, and we're looking at what we need to do to actually address the issues that are coming out.
Okay, so Labor's announcement, we have to point out as well, the government did put aside $17.7 billion just 12 months ago. It does take a little bit of time to get that money out the door. What are the differences between the two major parties? It seems that there's a fair bit of bipartisanship here, except on this wages issue.
Yeah, and look, I must admit, when I did my sums, I thought it was 17.8 billion, but let's not argue about 0.1 billion.
Right.
But I think the point is that there's a lot of money. But I think the other point is there's a lot of money that needs to flow into this sector. It's been neglected for a long time. It's sort of the unsexy child of the social sector in a lot of ways. And the other thing is there's another success story that's hidden here, and that is that more of us are living longer, and that's a great success story. But it does mean that we need to make sure that aged care is there for us, and it is becoming more acute. So, because we're living much longer and we're able to live either in our own homes and get community aged care or in a residential aged care setting, we need that care for more people. And in many ways, particularly in the residential sector, it is becoming more acute. So that's a success story in itself. Where are the differences between the parties? Look, I think there is a general agreement that we need to address this. I think there's perhaps just a difference in philosophy as to how we address it. My view is that the market will not look after this, not unless we increase wages. People need to go where they're paid enough to pay the rent. And for example, we know that rents in the private sector have increased by 20% in the last year. So wages haven't. And so if you're in a very low paid wage, it doesn't matter how much you love that job. You really still need to be able to pay the rent. So I think, probably the main difference is that we're either looking at the market to address it, or we're looking at those promises that were very passionately outlaid by the opposition leader last night.
Yeah, and look, Labor's not talking about intervening in the independent fair work process. It's just making a submission, which the government has so far refused to do. Anyway, let's talk about registered nurses, this announcement last night. Is that practical in the immediate short term to have a registered nurse on staff 24 hours a day?
Look, I think it's going to be there's going to be a case as to whether we can get that happening within the 12 months that that the opposition are promising if they become government. And again, that comes down to that issue of pay, but it also comes down to that issue of workforce. We can't just create nurses overnight, so we need to make sure that there is enough training. Otherwise, we will be cannibalising on medical services and on those other areas that utilise nurses. nurses. So there's certainly a need to make sure that we put that training in place, that we enable and make sure that people undertaking nursing training are doing an aged care elective, that's an option for them. And we need to make sure that we've got enough new people coming into that training. Of course, we do have issues where we did used to import a lot of our nurses pre-COVID. That is, I guess, a gate that's closed to the aged care sector at the moment, and one that we really, I think, we need to look at morally. Is it right that we look to poorer countries like Nepal or the Philippines to train nurses and then take them sort of ready-made into our sector here? And that's an argument we can push backwards and forwards. But certainly we will need some stepping up to make sure that we can get that many nurses into those services. But it's certainly not undoable. It's just quite a short time frame.
Okay, Kasy, thanks so much for your time. We'll keep on this one. We'll speak to you soon.